Well, let's work through this darn tutorial. So we're going to go through the tutorial. Why is that doing that? Um, tutorial. Um, you're going to have a workbook database. That's what we've got here. The assignment database is a similar type thing, and uh, yeah, we start with Access. So Access starts off. If you just double click on Access, you get that. If you double click on the database, you get the actual database. If you ever need to rename your file, you can save the database. So file, uh, save as, and save it. So Access is really bad at undo. It used to have no undo, but now it has some undo. So what I suggest is at the start of every day, you save your database as the current day. So save database as, um, uh, save as, and we have to close all the objects when you save a database, and we're going to call that one. So today is the 14th of July. Uh, 2020. So just so that we have a copy at the start of the day. So if you really screw up, you can come back to where you were at the start of the day. Sometimes undo works, but not always. So there's the Access has got a toolbar at the top here. So for example, the Create tab allows you to create things. External data allows you to get data from somewhere else. Database tools, what's useful about that is relationships. Sometimes you need to see what the relationships are. And so that's the kind of the standard thing. What else is quite useful is once you've got a table open, for example, you open up a table, you get tools that are specific to that view. So you've got view of the fields. You can change the type of fields when you're in the table view, and you've got things you can do with the entire table. And also when you're in the different view, you've got different. So for example, it's the design view when you're in the design view. So that's a bit of an overview of that, and yeah, this is the object selection panel where you can select objects, and there's four types of objects in Access databases, as I mentioned in the tutorial. There's tables, queries, forms, and reports. Tables are where the data is actually physically stored. So, for example, when we get out of design view here, we can see that the data is stored there. There's 29,000 rows of data, umpteen columns, and that's where the data is stored. Queries are views of the data, selections of the data, summaries of the data. I love data. 29,000 rows of data just makes me so happy. But you can't just hand 29,000 rows of data to your boss and say, the answer's in there. Go find it. Your job as an analyst is to go into that data set and find the data that your boss wants and or that's the business needs. And so you often have to slice the data. You've got to select out certain columns. You've got to select out certain rows, and you've got to summarize. You've got to add things together. You have to count things. That's what queries are for. They do all that work for you, the slicing and the dicing of the rows. And so that's what queries are for. Reports take the results of queries or even tables and make them pretty. Queries, the output of a query just looks like another database. And so, again, I love that look. I love the look of rows and columns, but not everybody does. Some people like to have, headers on the top of the page that say, such and such hospital, page numbers at the bottom of the page. Reports do all that. They add all the glitz and making things pretty. And finally, forms. Forms are for data entry. How do you get data into the database? Similarly, I can actually add data to this database. Let's go to the diagnosis table. I can go to the bottom. I can press that's add new blank record. I can press that button and I can add a blank record at the bottom. I can add, say Dennis's code and just made myself up a new ICD-10 code, and then I can say, pathology related to being named Dennis. Great, I've just made my own ICD-10 code. Well, yeah, I don't suggest you do that, but that is possible. You can actually add data, and in this table, it's actually okay. It's not really complicated, but you can see, that's not a proper ICD code, and we kind of want to restrict that for people. So the forms allow you to do that. They allow you to make things look nice. That's not, when you put your address into Facebook, and that's going into a database, but you certainly don't put it into a form that looked like that. They make it look nice. You got drop-down menus, so you got all that stuff. So that's what forms give you. Make it things pretty again. Great. So the tables, we talked about that in the last little bit. Different views of the data. I suggest you go look at that. These are the the controls down here. Number of records. Different views, blah blah blah. Design view, we looked at that in the last bit. Great. And so oftentimes the first thing you need to do in a database is you need to go and look. You need to kind of play with the data and figure out what the heck the boss wants. So oftentimes your query looks something like this. The hospital is required to report on quality safety issues for patients who have inguinal hernia admitted during 20 years ago, who are 60 years of age or older, have surgery performed during this admission. Please extract the morbidity data from the hospital, and so we need to say, well, what data is required. So we need data that has inguinal hernia. We need cases that are in this period. We need patients where patients are 60 years of age and over, and where the surgery was performed. It had to be in Victoria. So which fields does this apply to? Which fields does this? How can you get this data from here? So some of that data is in the database itself. So like inguinal hernia, we go look at DS1 K60. Which column is going to tell you is the person in there for inguinal hernia? Where is inguinal hernia stored in that database? Well, that table doesn't have it. I can search for it. I type in inguinal. It's having a bit of a hernia itself. Huh. That's interesting. This is why we do these things. All right. Nguinal. I think because it's a virtual machine and it's gone a bit. Huh. Well, let's try something different, because really it's totally having a spackle. Maybe it's just too big. Maybe there's too many columns and too many rows, and it says press Control Break to stop. So we'll Control Break. I don't know how to press Control Break on this here keyboard. We'll just stop the video there for a second and see what happens.